Hi guys, we're back. We're on to chapter 7. Last time we met a new character, and I all of a sudden can't remember her name, the Kayaker. She revealed that she's worked with Noah Blackwood before and that he's definitely a bad guy. So apparently she found some sort of bird egg or something, a really rare bird egg of a supposedly extinct animal, and was trying to figure out what kind of animal the egg was. And she gave it to Blackwood, and he basically stole it from her. And she stole it back, but he went through and canceled all her credit cards and basically broke into her house and stole all her money. So now she is seeking help from Wolf, who's the twins' uncle. So it looks like her name's Dr. Lee. So the uncle's decided he's going to help her against Noah Blackwood, but that he thinks that he's going to have to send the children back to the school, which Grace is happy about. Marty probably won't be happy about it when he finds out. So let's see what happens next. The Goblin Universe, Chapter 7. In the kitchen, Bertha verified that the tags were tracking devices and insisted that if the gizmo said Grace was in the library, then she was in the library, unless she had taken her tag off and left it there. Marty slipped his souffle into the oven, then wandered down the library again. The gizmo said Grace was there, but there was still no sign of her. Why did she take her tag off? Boo! Something hit Marty in the back. He screamed, collapsed on the floor, and covered his head, expecting a flying banshee to tear him to shreds, until he heard someone laughing. He looked up. "That's not funny," he shouted. "Not funny at all." When he stood, the Frankenstein monkey, which Grace had hurled from the balcony, fell to the floor. "I wish you could have seen your face," Grace managed to gasp. "You'll pay for this." He sprinted up the spiral staircase. Grace was small but quick. He couldn't get within 20 feet of her. Okay, he said breathlessly after 4 laps around the balcony. "Truce. I have something really cool to show you." Grace wasn't sure if she should trust him or not. "Do you promise not to grab me or do any other horrible thing?" "Yeah, I promise." Monkey lay below, so he could not seal the deal, but Grace allowed Marty to approach her anyway, keeping a sharp eye out for any sign of treachery. "You're in a pretty good mood," Marty observed, pleased to see the change in her. "She almost seems like the old Grace." He showed her the little computer. "It's called a gizmo." "What is it?" "Watch." He clicked her name, and a blue and gray squares appeared next to each other on the screen. "That's us." "The tags Bertha gave us are tracking devices." He gave her a suspicious look. "Were you up here the first time I came through?" Grace grinned. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Nose picker," Grace answered. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said innocently, and continued his gizmo demonstration. "I turned this video thing on and saw Phil and the guy they rescued from the kayak get into the Humvee. The guy is a woman." "No way. Her name is Dr. Laurel Lee." Grace recounted most of the conversation she had overheard, omitting the reason she was in such a good mood. By the time she finished, Marty had all but forgotten about the gizmo. He started browsing the cryptid sections. Grace followed along. "So Wolf believes in Bigfoot?" "I think so," she answered. He continued down the shelves. "And mermaids?" "Maybe." He reached the little humanoid section. "Elves, fairies, and leprechauns." "He might. And this crypto, whatever you call it, is cryptozoology," Grace said, "the study of hidden animals." "How do you study something that's hidden?" "By finding the hiding places, I suppose. I was just reading that some people call the place where cryptids live the Goblin Universe." Marty laughed. "Sounds like Halloween." "Wolf is dead serious about it. I told you there was something the matter with him. You should have seen the look in his eyes when he saw that egg. It was scary, like he was possessed or something." "So what's this monkey Bembe thing?" "It's pronounced Mokili Mbembe," Grace answered. "It's a dinosaur." "You're joking." Grace opened up the hidden ones and read the description. Mokili Mbembe is a small sauropod dinosaur slightly larger than an elephant. Its overall length has been reported to be between 16 and 32 feet. The length of the neck is 5 to 10 feet. The length of the tail is 5 to 10 feet as well. Its footprints are rounded in shape and 1 to 3 feet in diameter, with 3 claws. The distance between tracks is about 7 to 8 feet. Last specimens are thought to live near Lake Tele in the Republic of the Congo in Central Africa. Wow, a real dinosaur. He looked at the drawing in the book, which wasn't very good, in his opinion. Let me get this straight, he said. Wolf is going to the Congo to save a friend of his from Noah Blackwood, who isn't who he appears to be. Grace nodded. And Mom and Dad were going to investigate Noah Blackwood before they disappeared. Apparently, Grace said. Marty leaned over to the balcony, and in that box down there is a real dinosaur egg. Alleged dinosaur egg. What's Wolf going to do about us? Marty asked. Grace had been waiting for the question, but wasn't prepared to answer it. She thought it best if their uncle told him that he was sending them back to boarding school. I guess we'll have to ask him. Marty flipped open the gizmo and clicked their uncle's name. The third-story floor plan appeared. Unlike the first and second floors, which had several rooms, there were only 2 rooms on the 3rd floor. The small room was labeled bedroom number 1. The remaining room was called the Wolf Den. Oh, that's clever. And that's where the turquoise square appeared. Let's go talk to him, Marty said. Wouldn't it be great to go to the Congo? No, Grace thought. It would be horrible. And she had no doubt that, given enough time, Marty could talk Wolf into taking them with him. At one time, he had talked Dr. Beazle into taking their entire class to Spain for 2 weeks in the middle of the school year, despite the headmaster's intense dislike and distrust of Marty. The trip went well until Marty was arrested for setting free the bulls from a Madrid bullfighting ring. She needed something to distract her adventurous brother and saw her chance on the gizmo's small screen. That's the Kayaker, she said, pointing to Laurel's name. Oh, yeah? Marty clicked the button, and a yellow square appeared in the living room. And where are these other people? Grace asked. Marty happily started clicking through the names. Phil Sr. and Phil Jr. were in their houses in the staff compound, along with a half dozen other people. It looked as if each staff member had a separate residence within the compound because they were labeled house number 1, house number 2, all the way up to 12. Bertha was still in the kitchen. I was just in there helping her make dinner, Marty explained. She has a lot of learning about cooking, but I think I can bring her along. I whipped up a simple souffle, and she was pretty interested in the process. He looked at his watch. In fact, I have to take it out of the oven in a few minutes. He continued clicking names. Someone named Bo was on the north side of the island. Vid was on the south side of the island near a place called Lost Lake. Who do you suppose Bo and Vid are? Marty asked. More importantly, Grace said, what do you think Bo and Vid are doing out in the middle of the woods at the time of night? And why are they and the others out here on an island in the middle of nowhere? They obviously work for Wolf. Doing what? Who knows? Marty turned the gizmo off. Let's take a look at that dinosaur egg. Before Grace could stop him, Marty was halfway down the spiral staircase. She caught up to him just as he was opening the cardboard box. I don't think you should touch it. There's no harm in looking. He took it out of the box and held it under the light. Wow, a genuine dinosaur egg. It looked more like a semi-deflated soccer ball to Grace. Wouldn't it be great to see a dinosaur? Marty asked. There are no dinosaurs, Grace said, and there's no such place as the Goblin universe. She knew where Marty was heading, at least in his imagination, which had no boundaries. She had to stop him before he passed the point of no return. The last dinosaur died 65 million years ago. If there were any dinosaurs left, we would know about them. Every inch of the earth has been mapped. Mapped by satellite, not necessarily explored, Marty said, proud that he actually remembered something from his geography class. If Mokele Bay doesn't exist, why is it described in that book? And why would a pygmy lie about it? That's an excellent question, Dr. Lee asked from behind them. The twins jumped, and Marty nearly dropped the egg. You must be Grace and Marty, she continued. My name is Laurel. She looked up at the balcony, then smiled at them. But you already knew that. The conversation you overheard must have been very enlightening. Grace flushed with embarrassment. You knew I was up there? Laurel laughed. Not you specifically, but now I know it was you. I sensed someone up there. PD nearly gave you away. Why didn't you give me away? It wasn't my place. I'm sure you had your reasons for staying hidden. Did my uncle know? If he did, he didn't mention it. Laurel looked at Marty. Perhaps we should put that egg away. Marty handed it to her and she placed it back in the box. Now let's get back to Marty's question about a pygmy telling lies. I've never known a pygmy to tell an outright lie. Well, they are certainly capable of exaggeration, Grace said. She liked Laurel, but she was a little annoyed at the intrusion. She wanted Marty to herself so she could convince him how crazy all of this was. Mokalemembe probably started out as an animal in some story concocted by a pygmy to impress his friends. The story was passed from one pygmy to the next, and over the years, they started to believe that the animal was real. This is how most legends begin. I wrote a paper on the origin of legends at school. That's an interesting theory, Laurel said, but you're forgetting a very important point. How would the first pygmy know what a sauropod looks like? They don't have televisions, movies, or books. They have no idea that the Earth was once dominated by dinosaurs, and yet they can give you a perfect description of a sauropod. It was a good point. But Grace was not about to give up. Maybe some explorer came through the area years before and told the pygmies he was looking for dinosaurs. Perhaps he drew them a picture of a sauropod, and that's where the idea came from. That's possible, but not very likely, Laurel said. Lake Tele hasn't really been explored, not by the scientific community anyway. It's not on the way to anywhere, and there are no major rivers near it. What do rivers have to do with it? Grace asked. Everything. They're the superhighways of tropical exploration. The only way in and out of some of these remote areas. Explorers have been using them for centuries. The problem with rivers is that you only see what's on the fringe of the environment. It's like driving on an interstate freeway. You really don't see much. The Earth's last mysteries will be found in the interiors, in places where no one goes except for a few tough indigenous people. And believe it or not, there are still a lot of these places left. If you saw the Lake Tele region, you'd understand how a dinosaur could hide out for several million years. We'd love to go, Marty exclaimed. Laurel laughed. That was not an invitation, Marty, and it's not up to me, I'm afraid. What about that souffle, Marty? Grace asked. She had to put a stop to this. Huh? The souffle, she repeated. Didn't you say? You're right. He looked at Laurel. Are you having dinner with us? Yes. Great. We can talk about our trip then. He ran out of the library. Laurel watched him leave, then turned to Grace and said, Your brother is very self-assured. Grace nodded. He's also very impressionable. You mean open-minded? I mean easily taken in. I see. Laurel raised her eyebrow. But not you. Just because I don't believe in living dinosaurs or the goblin universe doesn't mean I'm not open-minded. I suppose you're right, Laurel said with a gentle smile. Tell me about yourself. Grace gave her a brief outline of her and Marty's history. So you hadn't met your uncle until this morning, Laurel asked, surprised. We didn't even know we had an uncle until a few days ago. That is rather odd, Laurel said. What do you think of him? I'm not sure, Grace hedged. We haven't really had much of a chance to talk. How old are you? 13. Really? Grace saw a glimmer of disbelief cross Laurel's face. I'm small for my age. So was I, Laurel said. In fact, I'm still pretty small. Grace smiled. She liked her Laurel even better close up than she did from the balcony. What were you doing when you came into the library? You mean this? She held her arms out and closed her eyes. Yes. I was walking an imaginary high wire. Why? Laurel put her arms down and opened her eyes. Because I was afraid. You didn't look frightened when you came into the library. Looks can be deceiving, Laurel said. My unorthodox arrival caused your uncle a good deal of trouble, and I knew he would be upset. I was nervous. Before I spoke to him, I had to deal with my fear. And you do that by pretending you're walking a high wire? A high wire is like a tightrope. Laurel nodded. Before I became an anthropologist, I was an aerialist in a circus. It's been a long time since I've been up in a real wire, but I still practice in my imagination. It helps me focus and control my fears. Grace would have given just about anything to learn how to control her fears. It must have worked, she said. You didn't seem intimidated by Wolf in the least. Your uncle is a formidable man, but when I'm on the wire, I'm taller than everyone. I could never do that, Grace said. Walk on the high wire? Of course you could. The only way to overcome fear is to get over them, a little at a time. Grace shook her head. I'm afraid of heights. You don't start out very high, Laurel said. When I was your age, I was afraid of heights too. My father was a circus clown. The ringmaster made it clear that if my father wanted to stay with the circus, his little girl was going to have to get up on that thin wire and thrill the audience. They made you? They sure did. What about your mother? What did she? She passed away when I was very young, Laurel said. It was just me and my dad. I still don't think I could get up on a high wire, Grace said. If you had to, you could. I have a feeling that Grace is going to have to walk a tightrope in the future of this book. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending so much time on this topic. If Petey ran into the room, barking, and jumped into Laurel's arms. She cuddled the poodle for a moment, then looked at Grace. Do you know why Petey barks? Because she's aggressive, Grace answered. Laurel shook her head. She barks because she's afraid, and when she's afraid, because she's little. If she were the size of a normal dog, I don't think she would bark nearly as much. Grace was certain that her own fears were caused by more than her size. But there was some truth to what Laurel was saying. My biggest problem in learning the high wire, Laurel continued, was my tendency to faint whenever I got scared. That happens to me too, Grace said. Like a lightning switch off? Yes, Grace said. Everything goes completely black. How did you get over it? By practicing. Eventually I learned to use my fear instead of letting it use me. When I focused on the thin wire, time seemed to slow down. I saw the world more crisply. Balancing my body seemed to balance my heart. I found that it worked on my other fears as well. They're still with me, but I've learned how to control them. How did your mother die? Grace asked. She fell from... Marty walked into the library wearing an apron that was way too big for him. Dinner is served, he said. So wow, Dr. Lee seems to have a very interesting backstory, something very unexpected. I wouldn't expect her to be a circus performer. So we'll see where this story is going. It's kind of all over the place right now. All right, talk to you guys next time. Bye.